Which three teams are we hoping the Mariners are talking to right now? And for which players? We'll answer that and more coming up here on Mailbag Monday. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, January 20th, 2025. This is Tiny Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'll be opening up the mailbag like we do here every Monday and answer some of your Mariners questions. But before we do that, quick shout out to our title sponsor today, FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. All you have to do to check that out is click the link in the description of this episode. Kicking us off here on Mailbag Monday is Big Lob, who wants to know, do you think the Mariners are the mystery team who may have interest in a Paul Alonso signing, or is that wishful thinking? I don't know about Paul Alonso, but I think the Mariners should have a lot of interest in Pete Alonso. But to answer your question, yeah, I do think that is wishful thinking, that they are the mystery team that was reported by Ken Rosenthal last week. As for who the mystery team is, I mean, that's what makes this whole situation so interesting, because really the only great fit that I could see outside of the Mets for Pete Alonso at this point is the Seattle Mariners. Like, I don't think the Toronto Blue Jays are a perfect fit for him, even though they were mentioned alongside the mystery team and the Mets in that Rosenthal report last week. So who does that leave? I would say the Giants, because they have money, theoretically, and Pete Alonso would be better than what they have currently at first base. But it could also be the Cubs. It could be the Angels. It could be the A's. Yikes. Maybe it's one of these teams that needs to add payroll and they're like, hey, Pete, let's sign you and we'll trade you mid-season. I don't know. I don't know if he would ever get that desperate enough to do something like that. But I really don't know who the mystery team could be. I'll go with the Giants, but I don't even feel great about that.
Yeah, the Giants make the most sense. But first of all, let's respect Dr. Paul Alonso, who is a respected journalism teacher at Georgia Tech.
Okay.
Go Yellow Jackets. I think that's their mascot.
Yeah. Megatron's. Yeah.
Yep. Also, I want to say Joey Bart.
Demarius Thomas went to Georgia Tech. I can't think of any baseball players who went to Georgia Tech.
Somebody just got drafted out of Georgia Tech, like in the top. I think it was it Bart, or was he another Florida State guy?
But I'll look into that while you answer the question.
But yeah, so I think the Giants do make the most sense. It is probably wishful thinking that the Mariners are in on this, even though they should be. We've talked about that.
It was Joey Bart. Good job.
Yeah. I feel like maybe Matt Wieters as well. But anyways. Seattle should be in on this. I don't think they are, unfortunately, but we talked about that on Friday, so there's no reason to rehash that. I think the Giants probably make the most sense. It's also possible that the mystery team doesn't exist. It's just a made up thing that Boris typically likes to throw out there when he's desperate, which is kind of always when it's not one of his elite players. But teams really don't fall for that often. I could tell you like an absurd mystery team that would be hilarious. Although I don't think they would do this again. But what if it's like the Colorado Rockies, who are known for bidding against themselves and giving bad contracts out? But yeah, I think
he did 50 plus homers at Coors.
Yeah, I think the Giants are probably the most likely of the mystery teams. Toronto's out, I would imagine, at this stage. The Mets, certainly a reunion with the Mets is still possible, even though they've said we think he's probably going somewhere else. So, yeah, Seattle should be the mystery team. I think it's probably wishful thinking that they are, but, maybe, like I said, it makes a ton of sense for Seattle to be that mystery team. So can't dismiss it offhand. It's just based on the behavior of this pathetic ownership group. I would be shocked if they were in fact a mystery team.
So some other baseball players from Georgia Tech, Colby. Mm-hmm. Matt Wieters, you got that one right.
Yeah.
Mark Teixeira.
No, he went to Georgia Tech. Okay.
Yep. Jason Varitek. Nomar Garcia-Parra. Some more recent ones. Justin Henry Malloy.
Oh, okay.
Xavier Curry.
Okay.
Yeah. So not a lot of hits. Not a lot of hits for Georgia Tech.
It's a pretty good baseball school, though. You get a couple number one picks in there. Like, yeah. Welcome to Locked On Georgia Tech.
That's right. Go Yellow Jackets.
Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Byron wants to know, with the report from Cardinals Live that the Cardinals are willing to pay a massive amount of Arenado's contract, would you rather have Nolan Arenado at 3 years for $35 million or Pete for 3 years, $70 million with player options? This is perfectly breaking in our favor, but money. For me, it would still be Alonso because that's more than likely going to be a 1 year deal. And even with Arenado's number being lowered from what it is now to $35 million over 3 years, there's still the deferred money that has to be accounted for. So yeah, that whole situation is just really complicated. I'd rather take the shot on Pete that he's only going to be here for a year. I'm going to get the impact that I want, and then he's going to hit the market and try and get the bag that he wanted this offseason that he's not ultimately going to get. So yeah.
Yeah. Also worth noting, the more money that the Cardinals eat, the better prospect you have to give up to get him. So you're also giving up a prospect to the Cardinals in exchange for Arenado. And then the deferred money is just such a mess. If you told me that the Cardinals were just going to eat all of the deferred money and they were going to take Mitch Haniger and it was going to be like a Logan Evans type of prospect, not a Cole Young type of prospect, I might consider Arenado over Alonso, but I don't think any of those things are going to be true. And so the deferred money continues to be my biggest hang up on the Arenado front. Not that Seattle can't or shouldn't be interested. I also don't know if Arenado would waive his no trade clause, but maybe. So I think I would probably there's too many sticking points in the Arenado thing. So I think I'd probably say Alonso.
Yeah, 100%. All right, we're going to answer more of your questions here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you once again by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. It's Mailbag Monday. We're answering your Mariners questions. Mariners Talk wants to know, is Jurickson Profar a fit? Positionally, where is he going to play? Can't play in the infield. He's really bad in the outfield. I guess he's a DH. And the yes and no really comes down to like, how much money is he going to command? How much are you willing to invest in Profar's 2024 after he was literally the worst qualified hitter in all of baseball the year before? Yeah.
Your outfield's already pretty well set up right now, and Profar, like you said, is a really bad defender out there. It's weird. We haven't heard a thing about Profar really all winter.
Well, and going back to like, how much are you investing in 2024 after the year that he had the year prior? Like, seems like a lot of teams are going, not that much.
Right. I think what we heard at the very beginning of the offseason is that he was looking for 3 or 4 years at about $15 million. Again, as we always say, the Mariners shouldn't be a team that scoffs at $15 million. That's, or they shouldn't opt out because a player wants $15 million. They should be interested in a good player. like that. But Profar is pretty scary. And so it's just a question of how much do you believe what he did last year? So far, the market has said none at all, not at all. But that could also play into Seattle's hands, because if he wants if he still wants a 3-year deal, but he can only get $10 million a year, Seattle might be interested. If he's willing to take a 1-year deal at $12 million or whatever, Seattle might be interested at that point. So yeah, Profar, I think, is an interesting fit for Seattle. It's not an ideal one because, again, where do you play him? I guess you can try and get him to play second again, but he hasn't done that in a few years, and he's not very good in the outfield. So, yeah, Profar still makes sense. You still have the DH to give at bats to right now. Pretty much locks in Solano and Rayleigh as your first base platoon. So it can work, and at a certain price point, you should do it. I'm just not sure if we're going to get there this offseason. But it is interesting that Profar's market, as far as we can tell, is non-existent, and we are less than a month out of from spring training now.
Deep Hanky wants to know, what 3 teams would you hope Jerry and Justin are most active in trade talks with right now, and for which players? It's interesting because, I mean, at this point, I would take literally anyone. I would take any sort of activity from the Mariners. To boil it down to 3, I would start with the Rays, because obviously the trade history between these two teams, and the Rays have Yandy Diaz, they have Brandon Lau, they have Pete Fairbanks, they have quite a few guys over there that I really have quite a bit of interest in. I would still say the Cubs, even though seems like Nico Horner's not going to be able to start the year healthy. I would still have interest in him. I would have interest in Michael Busch, or even, one of the outfielders like Seiya Suzuki or Ian Happ, depending on what else the Cubs might do. Maybe they sign Pete Alonso, maybe they sign Alex Bregman, and that makes, one of those guys that I just mentioned available via trade. And obviously the Mariners have had quite a bit of talks with them this offseason, so they know what Chicago likes and wants. I'll make my third team Miami, or just one of these teams that has to add more payroll before there's a grievance filed against them by the Players Association, because, hey, maybe I can get them to take on Mitch Haniger, or maybe I can get them to take on Mitch Garver, and then I can go use those resources to actually pursue Pete Alonso. Since this is like a hope thing, what do we hope they're doing? Yeah. I would say, all right, they're going to try and free up money with one of these teams so they can go and get Alonso.
Yeah. Technically that would be great, but I'm still looking at teams that could actually help me. And so I'll go Tampa, St. Louis, Minnesota, Chicago in the mix. Yeah, and obviously, the players there. It's really, at this point, there's not any new players that we haven't talked about quite a bit already. Yeah. But yeah, I still think the teams that they've talked to a lot this winter, typically those are the teams that get stuff done. And so that would be the Cubs. And I don't know if they've talked to Tampa a lot this winter, but they talked to Tampa a lot in general. So yeah, I think it's probably the usual suspects, honestly.
I'd love to say Toronto, but they're delusional as hell. So, yeah. And they just gave Santander, $92 million? Is that what it was?
Up to 6 years and $110 million. So they're not going to sell. They will in July, but by then they'll get pennies on the dollar for what they could get now. Yeah. So, yeah, Tampa Bay, St. Louis, Minnesota, Chicago, and then maybe one of the teams that needs to add payroll.
All right, we will wrap up Mailbag Monday here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/LOCKEDON. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. It is Mailbag Monday. We got a question from Dashing Quinn, who wants to know, with Ha-Seong Kim going to be out until May, how much would it cost for the Mariners to sign him? Lots of versatility for the infield. Well, that's kind of the question, right? Because at the start of the offseason, it seemed like Ha-Seong Kim was going to be one of the first names to go off the board. And now we're here on January 20th, and he's still unsigned. And I would have to assume that a lot of that has to deal with the fact that, yeah, he's not going to be ready to go by opening day. And I think that's also the reason why the Mariners are probably out. Because when you're working with a limited budget, you want guys that can impact you right away. Now, I know that's a bit hypocritical when we've also been talking a lot about Nico Hoerner. And it seemed like the Mariners didn't really care about that with Hoerner. Maybe at the time they thought he actually might be ready by opening day. But I think Kim not being ready until at least May, that's what seems to be the case. It's probably why the Mariners are not interested, because, again, with limited funds, if they had all the money in the world, then they're like, yeah, we'll take a shot on Kim and we'll just stash him for the first, month or two of the season for sure. Why not? But yeah, they're going to want impact as soon as possible. And so I think that just makes it a no-go on Kim.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons they might be more interested in Hoerner is that they would, in theory, as we know it, they would trade Castillo for Hoerner and shave some money. Whereas, by signing Kim, they're just spending money. Kim May at the earliest. It might be June before they see him. And it doesn't sound to me like Kim is interested in a 1-year stopgap deal and then kind of prorating it for how long he plays. And so if he misses 2 months, he misses a third of the season essentially, and he wants $12 million like per year. Like, okay, is he going to take $9 million on a 1-year deal? Is he going to take $8 million on a 1-year deal? Probably not. I don't know what Kim's market is right now, but obviously him missing the first couple months of the year is going to dampen what he can expect to make. And in theory, you would think he would want to sign and get back and be healthy and have a good year and then try again next year. But honestly, I haven't heard any talk of him like looking for a 1-year deal. He seems to want a multi-year deal, and that obviously is going to impact, his market in general. And I think specifically for the Mariners, they might be thinking like, hey, like we signed this guy and he's ready by June. Well, Cole Young might be ready by June, and that's not going to cost us $12-15 million. So I don't think Kim, and Kim's upside, he's a good player, don't get me wrong, but he's an average hitter at best. And so, it's not like you're getting anything offensively that's really worth waiting for. And you probably feel like defensively, you're fine without Kim. And so, yeah, it's just a little bit of a weird fit. And I think ultimately it's too much risk for the Mariners, which is a bummer, because again, they should be willing to spend that type of money on this type of player. But I just think I don't think they're even have him really on their board right now. Now, if he takes a 1-year deal and it's dropping and he wants $6-7 million and just get back and get healthy and try again next year, that changes things. But it does sound to me like he really wants a multi-year deal, and Seattle's not going to be the one team that gives it to him, I don't think.
Last question of the day comes from Oren. Wants to know, what is a realistic salary dump trade of Haniger or Garver to, say, Miami look like? What player would we target, and what prospects would we package to them? So, yeah, just talked about that a few minutes ago in the show. You're not getting a player back, right? You just want them to take the salary. That's the important goal of this. So you're not really targeting anyone here. Really comes down to just what's the best prospect you would attach to Mitch Haniger to get most of the contract off of the books. Now, again, the Marlins need to add how much money still?
27 million, something like that.
Yeah. So they can get over 100, or else Players Association is likely going to file a grievance against them.
They could lose their revenue sharing, which would be about $70 million.
Yeah.
So it's either spend 25 to $30 million and get 70, so basically make $40 million, or it's don't spend that and lose $70 million. So it's kind of a no-brainer. But they're running out of time.
It's like, do you have leverage here if you're the Mariners?
Not a lot. I don't think there's going to be a shortage of teams that have a contract that they would like the Marlins to take off their hands.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and if you're the Marlins, you don't really care about, well, he's an outfielder. We need an outfielder. That meant you don't care. But also I don't know what good does it do the Marlins to be like, sure, we'll take Haniger, but we're only going to pay half of his salary. If you're the Mariners, you jump all over that. Sure. Fine. But if you're the Marlins, just take all of it. Why are you trying to, you're trying to spend money literally just for the sake of spending it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't, it's kind of weird because if you want them to take all the money, you probably have to give them a much better prospect than if they want to eat half. But if you're the Marlins, no, it actually benefits us to take on all of this. So, the Mariners know that, but the Mariners know that too. So it's kind of this weird negotiation where it's this is beneficial to us. It's not like a regular salary dump because you do need to add salary. So there's something in it for you too. So the prospect that you send back would be the really difficult one. And so do you actually have to send a better prospect if they're eating all of it? Or is it the same regardless of how much money they're eating? You know what I mean? So,
right. I guess it's just more in comparison to what other prospects teams are offering to get them to take on those, those contracts. Right. So I don't know, just in a vacuum here, what's the best prospect you would attach to Haniger for Miami to take him on?
Maybe absolute best, maybe Harry Ford, but I'd really rather not. I think I'd probably be looking at the Williamson, Logan Evans, somewhere in that range. But again, is that going to outbid other teams who are trying to dump contracts on the Marlins? Maybe it might be. I don't know for sure. But the absolute high end would probably be Ford. I'm not giving up Ty Pete. I'm not giving up Senja. I'm not giving up Sloan. I'm not giving up, any of the, obviously I'm not giving up any of the top 100 type of guys. So I think probably a Williamson type. And part of that too is that I don't trust the Mariners to spend the money, all that.
Yeah. What's the reward at the end of the tunnel?
Right. Because if the
is
17
it Pete Alonso?
million, right, then that changes things. But
yeah,
at that point, you almost be like, okay, well, go sign Alonso first and then because at that point it's oh, okay. So in order to afford Alonso again, and this is stupid that they have to think this way, but in order to afford Alonso, we had to trade Harry Ford, I guess. Okay, that's easier to swallow, and you have it in hand, right? You have the prize in hand already. So yeah, but if you're gonna clear the $17 million and it's literally just to go get, Yohan Moncada and Paul Sewald, and you're gonna be and we're gonna save the rest for the deadline. No. You're gonna trade a good prospect and Mitch Haniger, and you're gonna go give the money to Ha-Seong Kim, who won't even play till June. That's borderline for me. So yeah, I part of it is I don't trust them to spend the money in a wise way. So it's a really tough situation. But yeah, the Mariners absolutely should be exploring it. I mean, there's no question about it. They should be trying that avenue. It's just Can you come to an agreement on the money? Can you come to an agreement on the prospect? And if you actually do want something from the Marlins, then obviously you have to give up. It's basically at that point, it's basically like two different trades, right? You go like, hey, we'll trade, like hypothetically, Andrew Nardi is the guy we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
If you say, hey, we want Nardi and we want you to take Haniger, well, the deal might be like Haniger and like Haniger, Ford, and Williamson, whatever, right? For Nardi.
Sure.
But in reality, it's Haniger and Ford for you to take that salary, or Williamson or whatever. And then it's Ford for Nardi. So in reality, it's basically two separate trades. You just do it all at once.
It's pretty interesting. We'll see if the Mariners go down that avenue. They should at least entertain it, especially if, that's the only way that they could make a Pete Alonso signing happen, which, again, we are fully on board with. They absolutely should pursue that aggressively. And if that's the way that they can make that happen, then, yeah, they should go do that.
It has to be, the means have to, or, the result has to be worthwhile. Like, otherwise you're just dumping money just to dump money. Like, if you're not reinvesting that immediately back into the ball club, what are you even doing?
Yeah. All right, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Tiding Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Tiding Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.